Welcome to How Wealth Roots When Interference is Gone. One of my favorite topics. This call, most likely, is for especially those of you who have not been on a call with me for a while or ever. This call is not like anything that you'll have experienced in personal development or spiritual wealth trainings, right? It is not about doing more. It's not about being more. It's about deletion. That's it. Deletion of what has been distorting movement all along. That's the crux of it all. That's it. If this is the first time you're on a call with me, welcome. Thank you for joining. But I'm going to tell you this, and it might sting. I'm not here to earn your trust. I will not waste your time or my time on that. I'm not here to create resonance. That's not what I do. And I'm not here to make you comfortable. Because at the end of the day, we want to get real. What I say tonight or today, wherever you are in the world, will do one of two things. It will either repel you if you're still looking for soothing language, emotional resolution, or spiritual framing. Or you will lean in and feel something settle. Not excitement or inspiration, but relief. Your body will feel it. Relief that the constant bracing might not actually be necessary. And obviously those of you in the Cosmic Tribe and those of you who work privately with me, welcome. You already know that this is not theory. And later we will hear from Celia, who is here with us. We'll hear from Celia, a client who has lived what rooting without interference actually looks like. Not imagined, but lived it. If you're watching the replay, welcome. The replay will be uploaded to a members portal and emailed, the link to that portal emailed out to everybody. I know there's a lot of people in various parts of the world that will be catching the replay. It will be emailed out to everybody after the call. And we can continue the conversation inside that portal. There's a place for you to ask questions, to comment, and so on. Just post them there. But right now, I want to get very precise. Today is not about making more money. It's about understanding why money still feels conditional. Conditional on effort. Conditional on performance, conditional on mood, conditional on how on you are, conditional on whether you are pushing hard enough. And some of you are making good money and some of you are scaling and some of you have had big months. And yet underneath everything, even when it's working, there's still something running, a quiet pressure. Not quite panic or crisis, but just a low-grade tension. You check the numbers more often than you need to. You think ahead more than you need to. You mentally calculate scenarios you may never face. You don't fully relax into what's already there, no matter what the situation is. Even in good months, part of you is preparing for the dip, even when income is strong. Part of you is still bracing for the shift. And you see, here's the thing. It feels responsible, it feels smart, it feels like leadership to do that. It feels intelligent, logical even. But underneath it is a belief. If I don't manage this, it won't hold. If I take my foot off the gas, it will slow. If I stop thinking about it, something will slip. So you stay engaged. You stay slightly tense. And not because things are necessarily bad, but because you don't trust them to stay good without you. That is the pressure, that is the vigilance, and that is what we are addressing. Not the money, not the strategy, the internal conditioning that makes money feel like it depends on you holding it together. Because as long as that condition is running, wealth will always feel conditional and you'll never fully stand in it. Sound good? Ready? And this isn't only true for those making strong money, it's true for those who just getting by. This will be why you're in that situation. If you're just covering expenses, the pressure feels louder. It looks like constant mental math, timing bills, stretching payments, planning how to make the next amount land. You think about money every day, not because you're in love with it, but because it feels fragile. And if you're earning well, that pressure looks more refined. It looks like protecting the month, sustaining the pace, making sure the next level holds, watching the gap between this month and last. Different scale, but same structure. In both cases, money feels like something you cannot fully relax around, something that depends on your vigilance. And this is whether you're making $3,000, pounds, pesos, euro a month, or 300,000. The pattern is the same. If I stop managing this, it won't hold. That belief is interference. Not lack of skill, not lack of ambition, but interference. And before we go further, I want to clarify something about interference. Interference, as we speak about it, is not a flaw. It is not trauma. It's not weakness. It's not lack of evolution. It is adaptation. At some point, tension created safety. Control prevented loss. Effort created validation. And supervision avoided collapse. Interference once worked. That's why the problem is not that you have it. The problem is that it is now running in environments where it's no longer required. And what once protected you is now distorting routing. And until that internal condition changes, wealth will always feel conditional, regardless of the number. Wealth routing is what happens when movement is not distorted by identity. Now, we'll share a couple of things with you today that demonstrates that. It is simply the way money moves when you are not interfering with it. I'll say that again. Wealth routing is what happens when movement is not distorted by identity. It is simply the way money moves when you are not interfering with it. Interference is the internal negotiation that slows, reshapes, or blocks movement. It's that voice that says, wait, check again, be careful, earn it first, make sure, don't lose it. It's that second guessing. It's the part of you that confuses control with stability. And here's the thing, and I've seen it over and over and over and over again. Most people think they lack strategy, so they add more positioning, more offers, more content, more optimization, more alignment, more mindset work. Doesn't matter whether you are an employee, a boss, an entrepreneur, self-employed, trader, it does not matter. Same thing, different strategy. But what they actually lack is interference-free authorship. Authorship is movement without internal argument. It is not confidence. It's not bravado. It is not a risk tolerance theater. It is the absence of self-rejection in motion, and this is important. Because most of what we are conditioned to do, have been trained to do, or are stuck in a loop of doing is exactly that. We are self-rejecting in motion. Most people call it growth, but a lot of what passes as growth is the refusal to stand on what already works. Constant transformation can become a subtle form of self-disapproval. Always upgrading, always refining, always correcting, always becoming, as if who you are now is slightly inefficient. And that is why we focus on deletion, because when we delete the interference, what was always there is everything. Nothing more is ever required. It's that quiet narrative, not quite there yet, that is self-rejection in motion. And when that is driving your action, wealth will always feel just ahead of you. Not because you lack capacity, because you're still negotiating with your own. There is a difference between expansion and self-rejection. Expansion builds from stability, from authorship. Self-rejection runs from perceived deficiency. If every next move is driven by, I need to be better first, you're not expanding, you're escaping yourself. And wealth cannot stabilize on a foundation that keeps moving. When authorship is present, decisions are clean. You don't need to brace before you move. You don't need to collapse when something shifts. And when that internal negotiation drops, wealth roots differently. Not because you worked harder or believed more, but because nothing inside you is now blocking the movement. And I will show you that today. We're going to expose where that interference sits. And when you see it, you will realize that the effort you've been applying was never the source of your stability. It was a compensatory reflex. And when that reflex drops, something else takes its place. Not motivation or hope, but structure. The thing is, before we talk about rooting, we need to talk about interference a little bit more, because a lot of people don't think they have it. They just think that they need to be more strategic, more disciplined, more responsible, more high performing, more lucky even, or more transformation, more evolution, more ascension, more whatever. But interference does not look like laziness. It looks like effort as safety. Effort is like the antithesis of wealth. Celia, you're nodding your head. You agree with me that completely, you can see that from your year last year. It's the effort is the antithesis of wealth. It looks like safety. You don't push, you're driven because stopping feels dangerous. It looks like control as you tell yourself you're being smart. But underneath, that is the belief that if you loosen your grip, something will collapse. It looks like strategy as armor. You build systems, optimize offers, refine messaging, not always because they're necessary, but because they make you feel less exposed. It looks like self-rejection disguised as improvement, and you call it growth or standards or next level, but it's often the refusal to stand fully in what already works. And it looks like waiting to feel ready. It looks like more clarity, more certainty, more confirmation, as if movement requires emotional permission. It does not. It looks like needing guarantees before action, as if wealth only roots when risk disappears. And the most subtle one, interpreting outcomes as identity. A slow month becomes a personal referendum. A big month becomes fragile. Your nervous system moves with the number. That is interference. And as long as that is present, wealth will always feel conditional, not because you lack capacity, but because you're negotiating with yourself before you move. That negotiation is the distortion. So let's talk about the red paperclip. Anyone know what I'm talking about? The red paper, anybody? Because this is one of my favorite examples of rooting without interference. No, it's not feng shui, Karen. Here's the pain. I don't know what to do. That sentence has stopped more movement than lack of skill ever has. Most people, when they don't know what to do one of three things. They overthink, they make a plan, or they wait to feel certain. And they tell themselves they're being responsible, but usually they're negotiating with fear. So here's the guy, this guy, his name was Kyle McDonald in 2005. Yes, he's from the same town as Celia. Well, eventually ended up there. 2005. He had a single red paperclip. He did not know what to do. He knew, I think he lost his job. He didn't have capital. He did not have a network. He did not have a 5-year plan. He had a paperclip that happened to be red. And he publicly committed to trading it up step by step until he got a house. Interference would have said, don't be ridiculous. Make a proper plan. Research first. Wait until you have something better. Wait until you have a platform, visibility. What will people think? Instead, he moved. No internal argument. He just moved. No identity crisis about how this made him look or whatever. He traded the paperclip for a fish-shaped pen. Then that pen was traded for a sculpted doorknob, and then the doorknob for a camp stove, and then the stove for a Honda generator, and then the generator was traded for an instant party of an empty keg or something with a Budweiser sign, and then that party was traded for a snowmobile, and then the snowmobile was traded for a trip, and the trip was traded for a truck, and the truck was traded for a recording contract. The recording contract was traded for a year's rent in Phoenix from a paperclip. Then that rent was traded for an afternoon with Alice Cooper, the rock band Alice Cooper. And then that was traded for a Kiss snow globe. You're thinking right now, what? Are you joking me? Yeah. For a Kiss snow globe. That snow globe was traded for a movie role. And finally, the movie role was traded for a house in Saskatchewan. I still struggle with that word. Sorry, Saskatchewan in Canada. 1 year, 14 trades, paperclip to house. Now, people love to romanticize this. They think of it as about creativity or boldness or manifestation. It's not. It's about the absence of interference. At every stage, he could have stopped and said, this is stupid, this is ridiculous, I need a better plan. He didn't. No trade was too small, no trade was beneath him, no collapse if something didn't look impressive. Every trade became strategically valuable only in hindsight. This is the important thing. He traded an afternoon with Alice Cooper for a Kiss snow globe. People online thought he had lost his mind. An experience with a rock legend for a snow globe. On the surface, it looks like a downgrade. But here's what was happening structurally. He wasn't trading for prestige, he was trading for leverage. 2 months earlier, an actor, Corbin Burnson, had contacted him because Burnson collected snow globes, thousands of them. And the Kiss snow globe was rare. So the illogical trade became the key that unlocked the movie role. And then the movie role became the key that unlocked the house in Saskatchewan. He did not sit there reverse engineering a 5-step master plan, or he did not say, okay, snow globes are part of the larger entertainment leverage strategy. None of that. He moved when the trade appeared, even when it looked strange, even when people criticized him. Even when it didn't look impressive, but it was valuable to someone specific. And that specificity is what moved the sequence forward. He didn't seek ideal trades. He stayed in the motion long enough that the next strategic link appeared. He was strategically positioned without seeking the ideal strategic trade. And that's what I call the trilogy of being in action: body, being, planet. We work back to front in this world that we occupy. Body leads, because body is what roots your, what I call Codex, your diamond, whatever it is, it's what roots your blueprint. And when you move, when body moves, being directs and planet amplifies. Positioning for him came from movement. When you are rooting trilogy of being in action, when you are moving, body, being, and planet, positioning comes from movement, not prediction, not strategy. He didn't optimize each step for how it would look. He optimized for continuity, and continuity creates the compounding. Interference would have looked like, this doesn't make sense. This looks like a downgrade. People will think I'm stupid. I should hold out for something better. Let me plan this more. Instead, he trusted the next move without needing the entire map, not blindly, but without identity collapse. That is rooting, not perfect foresight, clean continuity. Movement without internal resistance reveals strategy retroactively. Movement without internal resistance reveals strategy retroactively. He didn't create the strategy emerged because he stayed in motion. The only time you need strategy is when identity has the microphone, and identity is not truth, it is interference. Is everyone following me on this? If you take nothing else away, you take that. He didn't sit there trying to become the kind of person who deserves a house. He didn't have a vision board with a little picture of a house in Saskatchewan. He didn't try and become the future self who had a house. He didn't try and become a higher self. He didn't, none of that stuff. He just moved. No story. Rates. We are physiologically, architecturally designed for that. All the other stuff is crap on steroids. When movement is clean, rooting accelerates. We are designed for that. Our body, being, and planet, trilogy of this body, that is what we're designed for. Not because the universe will rewards bravery. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got nothing to do with alignment, divine time, and frequency. Nothing. Feminine energetics. None of that, because there's no internal negotiation slowing momentum. Most of humanity do not lack ideas. They lack interference-free movement. You tell yourself you're planning, preparing, refining, but often all you're doing is waiting to feel safe. And the only part of you that would ever need to feel safe is identity. And what is identity? Interference. You are Codex. You are the all. How could you not be safe? Rooting does not require safety. It requires authorship. The red paperclip was not magic. It was neutral. What made the difference was that there was no self-doubt spiral, no over-identification with outcomes, no paralysis disguised as strategy, just movement. And when interference is absent, reality reorganizes faster than logic can predict. Not because it's mystical, but because nothing inside you is breaking the system. He didn't know how it would end. He only knew the next move. And that's the part most people never allow themselves to do. Now, most people, I want you to hear this very carefully. Most people will hear this story and file it in their mind as a cool story. That dismissal is interference, and it keeps rooting. But that dismissal of that being a cool story or lucky guy or whatever it is that the identity is having you find it in your head is the interference, instead of that's the norm. The only unusual thing here is movement without internal negotiation. What if that is normal, not what we have been conditioned? In my model of the world, that is normal. And my world has proven that over and over again. And we will hear from Celia in a moment, who's experienced something similar. Real life, right here, all the way from Saskatchewan. This isn't about the paperclip. It's about what happens when interference isn't running the system. Because I've lived the same pattern, just in a very different context. Not just once, my whole life, many times over. It didn't start with a paperclip, it started with nothing. When I escaped 2 decades of imprisonment and violent abuse in my early 20s, I did not leave with education, qualifications, a 5-year recovery plan, a rebranding strategy, a healing roadmap, or money, or access to money, or human support in any form. None of that. I left with movement in the middle of the night. No internal argument, no story, no waiting to feel ready or rescued. An escape in the middle of the night in my early 20s after 2 decades of isolation and imprisonment. After I escaped, a sequence of events that got cash in my hands, in my sweaty paws, within 24 hours, and a flight from Dublin to London. Landing alone on a Friday night in November with nowhere to go. And within a week, I walked into a 6-figure job as a trading accountant in an oil and gas company in the West End of London. This has got nothing to do with manifesting. It had nothing to do with divine timing. It certainly had nothing to do with my optimizing my CV, because there was no interference negotiating my worth. At the end of that week, I actually had 2 job offers. I had more money than I knew what to do with. Within months, I'd bought a house and a car. Within months of escaping. And yeah, after 10 months, I was fired. Not because I was incompetent. I was fired for not conforming. And I was handsomely paid to leave quietly. A selective sigh of relief as I left the building. Now here's the thing, I did not make that mean anything about me. There was no identity collapse, no narrative about failure, no spiral, nothing. I moved again. And within a week or 2, I can't remember exactly, but with a very short time frame, the next job was better, paid more, same industry. That's rooting without interference, not dramatic, not mystical, just clean authorship. And just for the record, that cycle continued 5 or 6 times, each time getting paid off handsomely with a collective sigh of relief as the door closed behind me. So everyone can get back to their interference jobs. Until I finally got the message, do your own thing, as they all went back to their normalcy and interference. I finally got the message. And I've been an entrepreneur creating pioneering history-making businesses ever since. And this is the perfect place to bring in Celia. We've been working together for a while. Now here's the interesting thing. The house that Kyle ended up with, from paperclip to house, was in Saskatchewan. Celia is from Saskatchewan. And last year she lost her job. No, it's not a metaphorical loss, it was a real loss. Income gone, structure gone, certainty gone. And with that kind of disruption, interference usually activates fast. It usually looks like panic, immediate over-efforting, scrambling to replace income, second-guessing every decision, making the job lost mean something personal, rewriting the narrative as failure. Most people would have tightened. They would have tried to fix it immediately. They would have started chasing. Celia didn't. There was no panic reflex, no collapse into self-doubt, no frantic attempt to recreate safety. There was movement, clean movement, without knowing the next step. And what followed was not hustle. It was not a desperate pivot, not a forced reinvention. It was rooting, extraordinary rooting. Income arriving in ways she could never have predicted, debt cleared, land purchased, housing appeared, a book written, experiences that were not planned and could not have been. Not because she manifested better, because interference stopped. And when interference stops, resourcing reorganizes reality. So instead of me telling you what that looked like from the outside, I want you to hear it from Celia directly. So Celia, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me
Tell
now?
us what happened. Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello. Okay, yes.
So good to hear from you. Now, Celia shared this. I was working with Celia for like last year and a bit before that, I think. And I was aware that all these things were happening, but it wasn't until like we were at the retreat in Italy. You brought the room to a standstill with how you described your year. It was extraordinary. So yeah, thank you for joining and sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was extraordinary because I have for a long time done international humanitarian contract work. So I am kind of used to this come and go of income. But last year's was extremely abrupt, and I knew it wasn't going to change because it happened the day that Trump cut the funding for USAID, which then cut the funding for the organizations I was working for at the time. So my income was just bombed, like so many others, instantly.
So if I can ask you a question, when you lost your job, what was the immediate?
The immediate reality was that I was not going to have a paycheck. and that I didn't actually have any savings because I have always done this contract work. So it's always kind of been,
Yeah.
but I've always expected that another contract would come.
Yeah.
This time it didn't.
This was a completely different job, and out of the blue, lost it.
Exactly.
So what would the old version of you have done in that situation?
Absolute panic. I would have panicked, and I would have been phoning people, and I would have been looking for a job and problem solving.
Right. Over-efforting.
Exactly.
So, and would there have been self-doubt?
Oh yeah, yes, for sure. Because I quite enjoyed the work I was doing, and then I would have just sort of thought, oh, yeah, what is the point? I keep sort of losing the plot here.
So when it happened, was there an urgency to fix it immediately? What happened for you at this occasion last year?
Well, it's interesting because I was actually traveling at the time because I'm a bit of a digital nomad, and I was actually in Mexico when it happened. So perhaps it was because I was in Mexico and I wasn't in Saskatchewan. My immediate thought was, oh, I can write my book now. And it wasn't how am I going to pay my rent? It was, oh, I can write my book now. I had this book that I had actually started playing with a few months before because I've long wanted to write. And that was my first thought. Was, well, okay, how can I do that? And the next thing that happened was I got a phone call from a friend who invited me to California. So I went and stayed with that friend for a little while. And then another friend in another part of California invited me to house sit. So I went there and I wrote. And just, my book poured out of me.
Now, the important part about the book is that it also entailed research as well. And, wasn't it? It wasn't just writing a book.
Exactly.
It was research. Yeah. So tell us a bit about the book.
Okay. So that book that I was writing then was called The Word Shop. And it's a story. I am a grandmother. I have 4 grandchildren. It's the story about a grandmother who owns a bookshop, which is, my little fantasy life, and her granddaughter, who's actually a university student. And she comes to the shop once a week, and her grandmother gifts her a new word that changes her perspective on life. But I'm a little nerdy. And I had always followed the work of Masaru Emoto, who wrote this really cool book called The Hidden Messages in Water. And all along, I knew I wanted to see if I could find a hidden message in water with each word. So I ordered, while I was at my friend's place in California, I ordered Petri dishes off of Amazon. And I started freezing the water, speaking to it. I spoke the word that I was. Like this book has 52 chapters. It's actually 4 books now with 13 words per season. I spoke the word and I wrote a little quote about a word that the grandmother shared with the granddaughter. And that was it. And then I took pictures of it. And the other book is still not published, like The Word Shop isn't published. But what I did publish was the research, which was all the pictures of the water and the words.
For the words.
Like that was kind of like, that was fun. Like that's Spark. And it is this totally little sparky guy. It was just, and the one on the cover is the word beloved, and there's a heart in it. I had so much fun because I do love to research stuff and I do love to write. And so all of a sudden, I'm living my dream life.
Totally. And everything around you was supporting you to do that.
Exactly.
So tell us a bit about the specifics of what rooted in all the different ways.
So I was offered housing, to housing to write my book. Yeah, go, stay here, write your book. Another friend of mine that I hadn't seen for ages, but we talk maybe a couple times a year, randomly decided to pay off the debt that I had, just like offered to do that. So then I didn't have any more debt.
So this person just paid off your debt?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a significant amount of debt.
Yeah. Yes.
So, so that happened. And then I actually did a little bit of, for that particular person, I did a little writing for a manual and then got a little bit more, cash exchange for that. And that was not anticipated. And then another person that I haven't seen in years, and I still haven't seen, but we talk once a year, decided that I should own a piece of property in the town where my grandchildren go to school, and did that for me. So I now have a lot near the school where my grandchildren go to school that I will build a house on.
Just
When
like
my
that.
paperclip gets, turned into the house. I don't know how that's happening yet, but I don't need to know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you would say that altogether, combined, everything that for 2025 that rooted to you was one of the best years you've had.
It was. I made, income wise, the least amount of income I have ever made, but I was gifted in terms of some cash, some accommodations, more money than I've ever made in a job.
Yeah. And this did not involve aligning or manifesting or visualizing or strategies. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that because everything came kind of as a surprise.
Not planned.
Yeah, it was not planned. That last
Yeah.
year was the most unexpected year of my life.
And it could have been an extraordinarily traumatic year because Trump stopped the aid,
Yeah.
and then you got a job and were fired. But not only were you gifted all of that, and now you're going to turn into a house, right? You got to write the book that you've always wanted to write.
Yeah.
And look at what you've created from that book and the research that you've done. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. So how's this year going?
Well, that was the other thing that I forgot. In the middle of that, in the summer, I did briefly take a job that I promptly got fired from for exposing the boss for fraud, and that led to me meeting another woman who asked me, well, what was I going to do? And I'm saying, well, I'm going to go back and finish writing this book. She says, oh, you're a writer? She says, I need somebody to write my memoir. Will you? And she literally had to ask me 3 different times before I said yes, because I didn't really believe her. And I wrote her memoir. So that was the sort of second book. And then just recently, I've been just hired by another woman to write her memoir. So I am doing that right now. And I love doing that. I love taking somebody's story and pulling it together and especially, I don't know, maybe it's just the women that I hang out with, especially with women, to show them that their life is so much more than they sort of see it in a box. And the place I'm staying now, I did some editing for the woman who owns this place of a book that she wrote that I helped her pull together and get up. And she's just, she's thrilled with that too.
So this time last year, you could not have imagined that the next 12 months of your life will be around what you love doing, writing.
I could never have imagined. And it's crazy because I ought to write like from grade school on, but the narrative, the mimic, the interference was you can't make a living as a writer. And I carried that with me. And I always had writing in the work that I did, the humanitarian work that I did back when I was a farmer. I was always writing, but I never considered myself a writer or that I could do that as a living. It was just part of what I did. But now I just can't express how joyful and happy I am to actually be able to do this.
Yeah, your life is unrecognizable. That is wealth rooting without interference. Would you?
Yes, completely.
So if someone's sitting here listening right now and they're just getting by, or probably even doing well but feel the pressure, what is the one thing that changed for you?
Giving myself permission to do what I wanted to do.
Well, that's beautifully succinct and well put. Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely. That's amazing, Celia. Thank you. There's a question, how can they get hold of you? Where can people get hold of you? I've got ordered your book, but being in Mexico, it takes a while to get here. So I'm really looking forward to reading it. But how can people get hold of you?
Okay, I have a website. So my name is Celia Louise. So it's www.celialouise.com. My books are on Amazon. This is what it looks like. When Words Meet Water, Celia Louise. And it's, Amazon every country. Yeah, that's it, I guess. And
Amazing.
I'm also on Substack, Celia Louise, and on Insight Timer, Celia Louise. I do some recorded meditations because
Cool. Thank you so much, Celia. That was beautiful. You see the similarity between the paperclip and what you've been through as well. I mean, you're just getting started. You're just getting started. I mean, I just really appreciate you coming on and sharing the fact that had debts cleared or got land gifted to her or what it doesn't matter what the detail is, because the size is always irrelevant. Do you agree with that? It doesn't matter. It's that when you make moves, when you move, that's when reality reorganizes around you.
Right. And you always say that your money doesn't, you don't know, I can't remember how you say it actually, but here's what I want to say is that you never know how the source of money, like what the money is coming from. Like I would never have guessed that I would be gifted those.
No.
I would have expected to earn that money.
Yes, you would have to exchange time for money, and it'd have to be earned, it'd have to be efforting, it'd have to be a strategy, it'd have to be planned, and you'd have to keep yourself safe in the pursuit of it. You'd have to know that your basic needs are taken care of and all of that sort of stuff. That's the trap that we are all.
Exactly. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to share this. And I should just final thing I want to say is you always said last year, can you be happy making $100 or $500 a month? And I'm like, yeah, actually I can. And that was sort of, the base amount from my Canada pension plan that I took early that I survived on. So then it just grew from that.
Yeah, because we always have the big figure thing and we attach identity to that and we compare our reality to that identity. So that's the challenge. So yeah, awesome. I'm looking forward to what happens at the end of this year evolves for you, Celia.
We'll keep you posted.
So yeah, you do that. So what's important was this is not just luck. What Celia has just shared is not just luck, right? It's not about personality. It's not about optimism or being positive. Because I guarantee you there were moments where she felt all sorts of things. She felt vulnerable. She felt unsure. Those emotions, that they would have been there, right? But she doesn't let that form into an identity, which then rules her movements, okay? So it's not about being positive all the time. It's about the absence of interference. So bring it back to you. Most people are not lacking. Most of you are not lacking capacity. You're carrying patterns. You still equate effort with worth. If you're not pushing, you question yourself. If it feels easy, you distrust it. That's one of the biggest things that I've experienced with working with people. You still believe money requires tension. If there's no pressure, part of you feels irresponsible. You still measure yourself against outcomes. A strong month stabilizes you, a slower month destabilizes you, and you're moved by that. You still need to feel safe before you move. Red Paperclip Man didn't. I didn't. Celia didn't. You don't need more clarity, more certainty, more confirmation, as if movement requires emotional permission, because it does not. And most subtly, you still negotiate with your own authority. That's the killer. You soften your standards. You explain yourself. You hedge. You delay decisions. And then you wonder why money feels conditional. As long as this remains, wealth will feel conditional. If you can see yourself in this right now, still to manage it instead of remove it, that's not conviction. It's not for you. Not because you're incapable or unlucky, but because interference is still negotiating your movement. And interference always slows rooting. So the real question is not how do I make more? It's, am I willing to remove what is distorting the movement? What you just heard is not exceptional. It's what happens when interference is not running the system. And something else happens when interference drops in someone. It doesn't stop with them. This is the important thing. It doesn't stop with you. I regularly receive messages, not just about what shifted in their income from clients, but what shifted in their impact. What impact will Celia have with that book and that research she's done, taking a phenomenal research to another level? I get messages from clients about how the messages they get from their clients. Their clients write to them differently. Their depth increases, their authority sharpens, their work lands harder. Not because they learn new techniques, but because they stop diluting themselves. They send me screenshots of messages from their own clients, moments where something lands cleanly, where transformation happens faster, where decisions are made without hesitation for their clients. When your blueprint moves without interference, your potency amplifies, and that amplification roots outwards. This is not hype. That is clarity compounding. Now, most of you know how to make money. That's not the issue. You've had ideas, you've got skills, you've got capacities, capabilities, you've done all the things. It's not the issue. The issue is you don't trust it to hold unless you're holding it. That's the pattern. You don't relax into revenue, you supervise it. You don't move cleanly, you brace it. You don't expand from stability, you expand from tension. And because of that, even good months feel provisional. Even successes feel monitored. Even growth feels like something you have to maintain. That's interference. Not lack of strategy, not lack of discipline, interference. As long as you believe that money requires your constant internal supervision, it will feel conditional, because you're still relating to it as something fragile. And fragility always produces vigilance. It is not fragile. So the real question is not how do I make more, it's I'm willing to stop my own movement. What we have discussed today is not a concept. It's a structural distinction. When interference is present, you manage money. When interference drops, money roots, wealth roots, everything roots. But we also, when we have interference present, when we're managing it, it has to be predetermined, has to come in the way that we think it must come. Do you think for a second that Kyle realized that his opportunity trade with Alice Cooper would lead to the snow globe, or would lead to the next thing? It's crazy sort of trade. Do you think for 1 minute that Celia would have, at the start of last year, having lost a contract and a job, thought she would have a land, which is her greatest heart love, to have land in that town where she's close to her grandchildren? Do you think she would have realized that was even possible? Out of nowhere, when interference drops, money roots. But it's not just money, guys. This is the thing. It's not just money. It's everything. Everything in all areas of life, not just money. It's everything. Here's the part that most people miss. Seeing the pattern once is not the same as living without it. Interference doesn't leave because you understood it. It leaves when it is removed repeatedly and until it cannot reassert itself. And that's what the cosmic tribe is. The cosmic tribe is not a community. It's not coaching. It's not motivation. It's not strategy. It's not a container where you talk about your week or feel held. It is a live interference clearing field. It's where the exact patterns we name today get exposed while they're happening. Not after, not as reflection, not as insight. This is where identity distortion gets caught real time. The effort reflex gets dismantled at the point it activates. Your blueprint stabilizes so movement becomes clear and clean. And routing normalizes, not as peak state, but as baseline. Inside the cosmic tribe, we do not work on money. We remove the internal conditions that make money conditional. And that means the thing you currently call discipline, pressure, planning, optimizing, staying on top of things, being responsible, start being revealed for what they often are, just supervision. And supervision is interference wearing competence as a disguise. And this is why people can be highly capable and still feel like wealth depends on them. The cosmic tribe ends that pattern at a structural level, not through affirmations, not through mindset upgrades, through deletion, real deletion, the kind where behavior changes without motivation, where decisions stop requiring emotional permission, where the need to figure it out collapses, where what you do next becomes obvious and you do not negotiate it. So here's what happens now is, if this call exposed you, if you recognized yourself, you can apply. This is through application, not to convince me, to show me that you're ready to stop supervising your own movement. And if accepted, you will receive a personalized proposal based on what is actually required to clear for you. Because everybody's interference is different. Everybody's blueprint is different. How the impact of interference on everybody is different for everybody. So this is a defined structural clearing phase. Because interference does not collapse in a single insight. It collapses when it is exposed repeatedly in real time, until it can no longer reassert itself as identity. The important thing is that this is coaching. Coaching defines behavior. This is not mentoring, although we do plenty of calls, but it's not mentoring. Mentoring upgrades strategy. And it is not transformation culture. Transformation culture replaces identity for a better one, but it's still identity. And identity, even when upgraded, is still interference. And that is why people do years and years of coaching, years and years of healing, of optimization, and still feel the same baseline tension around money, around wealth. They've improved, for sure, but not deleted. What allows wealth to root is not a better version of you. It is you without interference. Living blueprint. Movement without internal negotiation. You saw it with Celia. You saw it with Kyle. And I know for me, that is what has allowed me to get that job within 1 week of escaping 2 decades, my whole life essentially at that point, of isolation, imprisonment, and violent abuse. Movement without internal negotiation. That is what breaks the loop. It's not a new strategy. It's not a stronger mindset, not a higher frequency identity, not alignment, not divine timing. Deletion. We identify exactly where interference is running you, not generally, but specifically. This is a group container, but with individualized clearing. Once you are accepted, there is a series of initial clearings with weekly group sessions and ongoing monitoring and clearings as needed. You will not receive a generic offer. If accepted, you receive a personalized proposal aligned with what actually is required clearing in your structure. Because your interference pattern is not identical to anyone else's. So if you recognize yourself to what we've discussed today, apply. One of the newer members recently described something that tells you exactly what this clearing does. Not in theory, in behavior. She noticed that people who used to pull her into drama simply stopped landing. What is the impact of that in your life? Conversations that would have required long emotional labor didn't. And she stopped holding emotional charge. And what happened next? She felt lighter, more energy, less fatigue. That is interference collapsing. When interference drops, you become less hookable. One of the most amazing things that I have done recently in my work is we have been in the Cosmic Tribe and some not in the Cosmic Tribe. We've been doing a series once a week called Mimic Monologues. And those of you who've been doing it with me, Mimic Monologues, how eye-opening has that been? When you start to see the extraordinary ways in which you are ensnared in interference and mimic, it is nothing short of jaw-dropping. We have unpacked it in personal development, in relationships, in money, in business, in politics, in media. It's everywhere. When interference drops, you become less hookable. You stop carrying emotional weight that isn't yours. And when you stop bracing in relationships, you stop bracing in business. It's the same pattern. Interference does not only distort money, it distorts attention, it distorts energy, it distorts the way where you leak yourself. And when those leaks close, capacity returns. That's what happened with Celia. She didn't even know she'd stopped leaking. You know, it's like, it sounds funny, doesn't it? You don't even know you stopped leaking, right? It just is like one day you realize, hold on a second, everything's different. It's not like you get like an electric shock that goes through your body that says, I am now interference free. No, your life shows you. And then you realize, oh, that's different. I mean, Carolina, you're on here. Carolina was talking about that at the retreat in Italy. It's quiet because it doesn't just impact wealth or money or business, it's relationships. But more than that, it's your body, it's your vitality, it is what happens with your body. It distorts where you leak yourself. And when those leaks close, capacity returns. When hooks collapse, capacity returns and routing stabilizes. Because you stop participating in distortion. And that's the level that we work at. Not upgrading personality, not improving habits, not if nothing changes, this continues. That's the important thing. You continue supervising revenue. You continue bracing for movement. You continue stabilizing yourself against numbers. You continue expanding from tension. And 12 months from now, you are more capable, but still conditional. And that is the real cost. This is not for the people who want better tactics. I said that right at the beginning. This is not the people who want higher motivation, feel more inspired, emotional support, accountability structures. None of that is here in the Cosmic Tribe. Business templates, none of that. If that's what you're looking for, they are excellent. There are excellent programs for that. This is for people who are done circling the same pattern in increasingly sophisticated ways. Because you don't need any of those when routing is optimized, when you're routing interference free. You don't need better tactics, higher motivation, emotional support. You don't need any of that. You do not need a plan. You do not need to know what the next step is, and you do not need to have a story or narrate safety. You don't need strategy or another refinement cycle. You don't need a better identity. You need less interference, less internal negotiation, less bracing, less self-supervision, less effort to use the strategy, less strategy because strategy without interference works. But strategy with interference will always feel conditional. The difference is not intelligence, it's not skill, it's not timing, it's distortion. And distortion cannot be managed. It has to be removed. And if you recognize yourself in what we discussed today, apply. Because this work changes how you relate to power. This isn't about money. It's about whether you trust yourself without tension. Go read What is Mimic. It's life-changing. Thank you, Fiona, for that. Thank you. Carolina, you just subtly realize whatever was there is not anymore. And the freedom that gives you is so precious. I love that. Love that. Are there any questions that I haven't answered? Mimic monologues is awesome. Good, Sandra. Thank you. It's made such a difference as the way we engage things. Cosmic Tribe has changed everything for me too. Cosmic Tribe has changed everything. What about the people who don't have the discipline and are starting out in a business? What do you recommend for them? Join the Cosmic Tribe. Okay, so discipline is interference. 100%. Discipline, the whole construct around discipline is interference. The only reason you ever require discipline is because there's an identity running, and that identity requires discipline. When you are rooting as your blueprint, you never need discipline because discipline requires effort. Effort requires discipline. So, discipline is discipline. When people talk about discipline and consistency in the same vein, that concept, that construct is interference. Consistency happens naturally when you are rooting optimally as blueprint. Yeah, I just discovered you today 5 minutes ago. Wow, welcome. Can you define structure, interference, blueprint? Oh my goodness, right now I cannot, but right now what I would suggest is watch the replay. Because I might have covered it, but also you can get the book, What is Mimic? Because we talk about it a lot in there, or I talk about it a lot in there. That's the big one, stopping supervising my own movement. That is for everybody. That is rooting interference. So yeah, that is got interference. Okay, are there any other? Carol, oh, thank you. I'm loving your book. Thank you so much. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. Apply to join. I will look at it and you will receive a personalized proposal back based on what is required clearing. The idea is that when you are interference free, you are in authorship. When you are in authorship, you are rooting your blueprint and you are unhookable to interference, and you will move. And you will move. It's those moves that reorganizes reality. This is physics, this is structure. This is not spiritual, this is not self-development, this is not mindset. It's structural. Okay. Thank you for joining me. Have a beautiful evening, rest of your day, and I'll see you around sometime soon. Bye. Hopefully in the Cosmic Tribe.